You probably have already heard by now that Disneyland has announced new ticket prices for single day, multi-day, and Magic Key tickets. Every year we have sort of a similar conversation because every year there's there's outrage and demand for lower prices, and people get upset, and justifiably so, because the park is obviously getting more and more expensive to go to. Now, I've had some time to sort of digest all this and come up with some thoughts, and this is going to be a bit of a riff, which is going to be good in the sense that you're going to get some really raw, honest talk about this topic, about Disneyland ticket prices, but then it could also get a little bit wordy, and I might expound a little bit too much. And also, I will say that this is a very emotional conversation, and for some of you, you're going to hear some things in this video that you probably want to hear, and you might hear some things that you probably don't want to hear. So with that said, buckle up, because we're going to get into the kind of the truth about these ticket prices, and really what I mean by that is, what does it all mean? It's simple. It's easy to just say Disney raised the ticket prices again and talk about how they're tone deaf, or the parks are not the same anymore. But I have sort of a somewhat different take on some of these topics. Others maybe not, but we'll see. We'll start off with the single day tickets. And tier 0. There are 6 tiers. We've been on this sort of flexible pricing plan for a couple years now. And they added tier 0, I want to say 3 price increases ago. And that was to create actual, like a bottom line, a very cheap ticket for guests. And for the third year in a row, it's $104. Now, there's only, I have a chart here. I got some help from a lot of folks in putting this together. And what this first grid is going to show us here is how many dates are on a particular tier. This is courtesy of our friends over at Theme Park IQ. By the way, if you haven't heard of them, you haven't heard me talk about them yet, Theme Park IQ is awesome. I get a lot of great information from them. They're actually a great source for getting some of those hard to get reservations for you Magic Key holders out there. But they have a lot of different services. One of the things that he helped me with was determining how many days are in tier 0. And according to this, well, there's 5 left in 24, and then 15 more coming in the part that they're measuring for 2025. The future calendar isn't complete yet. The 2025 calendar, I think it runs through the middle of the year, perhaps. Only as far as ahead as you can make a reservation. I bring that up to suggest that it's pretty cool. We'll just start right off with that. It's pretty cool that they haven't raised the prices for tier 0. Now, that's optics. Disney's doing that, obviously, for optic reasons. That they want to give the illusion, the impression that they are affordable, and they are trying to keep the prices affordable. So no price increases for tier 0. This is the third year in a row where we've been at $104, and that's for 20 days in between now and the next, or when the calendar is up. The rest of the tiers 1 through 6 are showing pretty much the same increase, about 6% across the board, from 5.9 for tier 1 to 6.5 for tiers 3, 4, and 5, and then tier 6 is 6.2 and tier 2 is 6. Compare that. We actually did a video almost exactly like this last year, obviously. Compare that to last year. The graphic for this year, by the way, brought to you also by friend of the show, Scott Gustin on Twitter. You guys should be following him. Amazing coverage of the Disneyland Resort. He made this graphic to sort of break down all of the changes in one single view. So that's where we got those percentages from. But you look on the right, and you can see that the prices actually went up more last year, in some cases, than they did this year. This year was actually kind of a nominal change if you consider it across the board. There was, well, actually, it says tier 0 went up. Oh, yeah, no difference. That's right. It was 104 before, it stayed 104, and it's staying 104 once more. But tiers 1 and 2 went up by 4% on average, where we're going up 6%. And then tiers 3 and 4 are in that same range, although tier 3 was going close to 7%. And then tiers 5 and 6 went up by more than 8% compared to 6.5 and 6.2. I illustrate this for two reasons. One, this year is no different. I'm sorry. This year is no different than previous years. And I could show you a 2023 calendar or price increase video where we made nearly the same observation. But this is no different than what they did last year. As a matter of fact, it's at the same exact time. The video that we did for this price increase last year was October 10th, 2023. But there were actually higher increases for tiers 5 and 6 than there were this year. So not to forgive Disney or anything like that. I mean, those increases are in excess of the typical rate of inflation. And now that's a conversation that we often have with how tickets have escalated at Disneyland in relationship to the cost of living. And that's typical inflationary rates. There's supposed to be an equilibrium there. Prices are supposed to go up with the cost of living, or commensurate with, right? So, but we've seen obviously that people aren't making as much. Income is not growing at the same rate that costs are going up right now. That's inflation. So Disney is outpacing that, and that's still pretty consistent. 6% is still pretty high. I digress. One thing I want to note here, what we saw last year, and I guess to a lesser extent what we're seeing this year, is Disney's intention to push more guests into the lower tier days by offering a discounted. By that lower tier days, I mean like the Tuesday, as opposed to Saturday or Sunday. They want to make those dates more prohibitive in order to keep the crowds down, because there's too much demand for Saturday and Sunday typically. So they're raising the prices to gently encourage guests to go on a Monday or Tuesday, and that's been an ongoing thing. That's the reason why we say that Mondays are the new Saturdays around here, and that has been the case now for going on 2 years. This is not a new development, and that's another point that I would like to be making as we make our way through all this, is that these price changes are not a new development. This is part of a very long game that Disney is playing, a very long game that has been going on, well, gosh, I want to say maybe 10 years now. Less so in terms of ticket prices, but more so in just terms of the strategy and finding an equilibrium between supply and demand. We used to say all the time that there was no price that Disney could put on a Magic Key, for example, which we'll get into in a second, that would dissuade Magic Key holders from wanting to buy them. I thought there was no limit, that there was just infinite, that you could make it 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. There would be a market for all of those, and they could sell them all. And I'm judging by the fact that they stop selling them would suggest that there is no limit still. They are selling out. Let's get into Magic Keys while we're at it. Okay, so we've got Inspire now selling for $17.49. That's an increase of 6%. Believe is selling for $13.74. That's an increase of 10%. Enchant selling at $9.74. That's an increase of nearly 15%. And Imagine Keys, the lowest tier, is now selling at $5.99. That is a 20% increase. Now, I'm enunciating Enchant and Imagine. Wild. That's just wild increases, because that way outpaces inflation. That way outpaces the cost of living. So there's some other thing going on there. And that other thing is Disney has discovered, they have realized two things. Again, I love those two things. They have discovered two things. One, that those prices were severely underpriced. And we've been saying that for pre-COVID. When the park was shut down and they were talking about bringing back Magic Keys or bringing back annual passes, one thing that we were saying was that they were an incredible value. Guys, those old passes were an incredible value. And we're like, oh my gosh, I hope they don't ever figure it out. They figured it out. And this goes, actually, take a look at 2020, or last year. Enchants went up $150. That was a 21% increase. So they've gone up 21%, or 21% last year, and another 14% this year. They've gone up, let's see, We're at $974. Oh my God. So they went up $125 this year, $125 this year, and $150 the year before. They have gone up $275 Enchant Key has. That is almost a 50% increase. It's about a 40% increase. It's wild, right? Now this year, Imagine is getting that 20% increase. It was $4.99 last year. This year it is $5.99. That's a $100 increase. That's a big number, considering Inspire also is $100, but at a different price point, so the percentages are weaker, but relatively speaking, Inspire is barely increased at all. But last year, Imagine went up just $50. So for whatever reason, they decided they were good with the Magic. I got 0% difference on that chart, but it's actually more like 9%. $449 to $499 is about a 9% increase. So what does this tell us? Enchant and Imagine. Like I said, two things. They were severely underpriced. Those were the keys that they probably sold a ton of when they brought those Magic Keys back. But it's also suggestive of Disney, again, trying to push Magic Key holders into specific keys. Obviously, they're trying to push them into the Inspire key. Disney wants you to own the Inspire key. It's the same reason why, I'll give you a layman's example. It's why a medium popcorn costs $5.50 and a large pop $15.50. A medium popcorn costs $15.50, but a large is $16 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like they want you to spend the most possible. But the way they do that is by narrowing the difference between the top and the bottom. And just making you think, well, gosh, I'm already this far. I might as well go all the way. They want everybody to own the Inspire key. That's what this is telling me. This increase this year tells me that they want people to own the Inspire key, which is interesting because I feel like, and maybe this is part of that long-term game that I was talking about before, boiling the frog is a term that we have been using for a decade here on Fresh Baked. I know it's kind of an odd thing. I don't know if you've ever heard the term, but long story short, the I don't know, theory or the observation is that you could put a frog in a frying pan, right, and just leave it on a low simmer and it'll never get out of the thing. But you put it on boil, it'll jump out. Or a high heat. What they're trying to do is slowly inch us towards a certain goal. And that's what has been happening, and it's still going on. Long game. This has been a long-term game, and it's still going on. This is not a new thing. This is not something that Disney has just decided to do. They're thumbing their noses at guests and saying, I know things are expensive, but we're going to do this anyway. They're just executing the plan. They're executing the plan that they have been executing for the past 10 years or so. I digress. Inspire key. They want us to own the Inspire key. They want us to own the top tier. They don't. The Enchant and Imagine are the unfavorable attendee. We were all trying to figure out who the unfavorable attendee that Josh D'Amaro was referring to. What he was suggesting is that there was a percentage of guests that were not behaving in the way that Disney wanted them to. They were interfering with Disney's plans or goals or whatever, and they were sort of clogging things up. And I'm almost positive that it's the Enchant and the Imagine keys. So they're trying to make it less desirable for people to buy those keys. And it makes sense because as an Inspire key holder, it makes sense, especially because we're all operating from the same reservation bucket. And so when all four passes are competing for the same days, Inspire keys really have no chance. They really have no chance in the sense that my Inspire key, I'm trying to use reservations for today, for this week, and then for next week. Inspire keys go a lot. That's generally the perceived, pattern is that we go a couple times a week or once a week or something like that. So we can't be booking dates 3 months in advance. We're just not going to do that. Only the most, very specific dates like Christmas Day or the day that Tiana's reopens or something like that. Then I'll book that November 15th, which I've been sitting on for a while. I digress. Inspire keys can't compete with Enchant and Imagine because they will. They'll wait for 3 months for their date to show up if it becomes available. So I think that they're trying to narrow that gap between them, and it's going to keep going. It's going to keep happening throughout the years. They're not going to do it all at once because that would be shocking, And that's something that Disney has always been loath to do. It's why you don't see them raise prices even more, considering how much room there is in that supply-demand curve, because they don't want to shock guests and have them really shake their fists, even though they do it anyway. We do this every year. So that's the reason why you're seeing those big increases at the bottom and a very little increase at Inspire, which, by the way, I was alluding to earlier. I'm still kind of surprised because I know many Inspire key holders, many guests who would not only pay more, but they would pay a lot more, I think, for a key that's, let's say, no reservations required, or just give them more, 12 reservations instead of 6, or something like that. You could get a fair amount, but they won't do it because they still want to maintain that illusion of affordability, which is why Lightning Lane Multipass is still priced the way it is, which we can get into that as well. But before we do, I want to show you this graphic that Disney made, which I found to be very illuminating, because I've often wondered, does Disney want to be in the Magic Key business? Because they don't act like it sometimes, because they make it very difficult for us to use them. There's not, the perks are not that great anymore. That we haven't had a solid Magic Key holder perk for a while, although we are going to get previews, Tiana's Bayou Adventure previews, which that's another conversation. But the Unlock More graphic that Disney made is very interesting because they're selling you. They're actively selling you. They're doing the math for you. They're saying, buy a Magic Key and it'll pay for itself in as little as 4 visits. Guys, this is great math. What a bargain. Okay, Disney, thank you. Can I buy one, please? No, you cannot. I don't understand. They're not for sale, but we have this graphic nonetheless. So they're telling you that because every Magic Key is a park hopper, so you factor in the park hopper price into your single day ticket, and a Magic Key holder can pay for itself in 4 visits over the course of a year. An Inspire key holder will pay for itself in 11 visits. This has been the topic of videos, people doing the math on this stuff, and they're always trying to find out what that balance is. What is the correct pass for me? Disney's telling you right here, 11 visits, Inspire key. Okay, but that's based on tier 0. Imagine plugging in tier 6, where it gets, you could a 1 day, 1 park ticket could be $200. That's a real price, $200. See? Tier 6. Old price $194, new price $206. 1 day, 1 park. We haven't even put a park hopper in there. You drop a park hopper in there on that one, I think it's $75. $281. $281 for a 1 day park hopper on a tier 6 date. So if you want to go on those days, which, part of the calendar we can't, it's the Christmas season. That's some of those orange days. But now you're paying for your pass in what? I don't know, 6 visits? 6? The Magic Key, in spite of the fact that they're going up by 6, 7, 10, 20% a year, is still an incredible value when you do it in that, and when you express it in those terms. And that's something I've been saying for a long time, and it still is. It's still a great value, but it's going to keep getting more expensive. So I thought this was an interesting graphic for Disney to come up with. It can pay for itself in 4 visits on just tier 0 days. Incredible. They want to sell you Magic Keys, by the way. That's the whole point. This tells me that they are promoting and actively encouraging guests to think about getting a Magic Key. Now, if they just sell them. Now, let's talk again about that. We were just talking about the $206 ticket and how insane that is. I have a grid. This, again, is courtesy of Theme Park IQ. Let's take a look at how many days are set up. That tier 6 that we're just talking about, tier 6 At $206 for a single day, single park ticket, there are 31 days on the calendar that look like that. As a matter of fact, I've got another graphic. This one also courtesy of Scott Gustin. These two grids are color coordinated. Tier 0 is green. Look for the green dates on the calendar. Tier 6 is orange. Look for the orange dates on the calendar, and we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot about, what Disney's intentions are and how they're trying to drive guests into certain days. The pink ones are also incredibly expensive, $196. It's virtually tier 6, right? So how many days are there on pink? Tier 5, another 27. So 31 and 27, that's 58 dates. 20% of the calendar are tiers 5 and 6. And you can see that a lot of that is in December, the last 2 weeks of December, which we can't go anyway as Magic Key holders. The last week of November, the weekends in October. That's right now where we're at. We've observed, by the way, the effect of this kind of calendar just in the last couple of episodes. I was in the park last night, shooting a video last night. That would have been, October 9th? That was a pink day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this whole strategy thing about closing the park, etc. And it was dead. There was no waits anywhere hardly. Pink day. $196 as of this update. But I was there on one of the busiest days, one of the most high demand, high cost days of the year, right? Same thing. I was in DCA on October 6th, and we had the same experience. It's a Sunday. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is delightful. We were just breezing through the park. Pink day. So look at this calendar. Like, for example, January, the middle of January, see all those green dates? I'm not sure I want to be in the park on those days. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be insane. Those are your $104 days. That's half off. That's half the price of a tier 6 day. Half. That's going to draw a crowd. That's going to draw a huge crowd. And they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep pushing people into those dates. The tier 1 is slightly more. It's $20 more. That is, let's see. Tier 1 is 15 days and Tier 2 is 22 days. Not very many. So they're definitely favoring the higher end in terms of how frequent the days show up on the calendar. The most common day, I think, is Tier 3. Tier 3 is in there for 48 days. Tier 4 is in there for 40 days. Tier 3 being the dark blue, super dark blue, and Tier 4 being the purple. One day, by the way, I looked at this calendar and I'm looking for anomalies. I'm looking for really curious, strange things that I would like to observe. November. Look at November 11th, pink. And then the next day is green. They're going to go from the second highest tier, which is just a few bucks away from the top tier, $196 on Monday. I'm sorry, take that back. Yeah, no. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. Monday is $196. And then the next day, Tuesday, is going to be $104. I'm going to be there on those 2 days to do a comparison. I want to show you, I can visibly show you the effect that these prices are having on guest traffic in the park. And I mention this because I want people to be more aware of choosing their dates if you want to, because it changes your experience. What kind of experience do you want to have vis-a-vis how much you're willing to spend? You have to compare those two things. If you want to have a easygoing, fun experience in November, it's going to cost you $92. An extra $92. And you'll be able to see it. Save this calendar. I don't know where I can put this. You know what? It's on. I'll put it up on our on our Twitter feed if you're not already following us. And then I'll put it up on Twitter, and I'll also put it up. We'll do a newsletter article. If you haven't joined our newsletter yet, you should. There's a link in the description. I'll share these images in that article as well, so that you can save them for yourself for later. Okay, so that's the calendar. That's the price increases. Let's go back real quick. I just want to take a look at and compare the multi-day tickets. That's one thing we didn't get into. Let's compare how those prices changed since last year. This year, the 2-day ticket went up by $20, up 6%. 3-day, same thing, 6.4%. 4-day, it's up $29, 6.5%. 5-day is up $31, 6.5%. Very steady, very even. Last year, we saw double that. And again, I bring this up if only to set the expectation, to curb the outrage, because there's every year there's outrage, but this is actually nominal in a lot of ways. These prices increases are actually nominal in a lot of ways. Last year, the 2-day one park ticket went up $20. Same increases this year. I got zero there. I'm not sure why, but that's $20 over 300 is something like 15%, 6%, 6.5%. So the 3-day one park ticket went up by $30 last year. That was 8% compared to, it's actually what that went up less. Last year it went up 30. This year it went up 25. Again, it's still a lot, but it's nominal compared to previous increases. I'm not sure how comfortable we need to be getting with that. That's probably a whole other conversation. We're getting comfortable with what is nominal and what isn't. I digress. 4-day went up by $50 last year. This year it went up by $29, so it's half. Last year it went up by 12.5%, 12.6%, and then the 5-day, same thing. It went up by $65. The 5-day park, or I'm not a park hopper, but the 5-day single park ticket went up by $65, 15.6% increase versus this year $31 and a 6.5% increase, more than half, or it was more than double last year. Again, it's still a lot, but it's when you compare it to how, the history, they're actually kind of, staying nominal or even flatlining a little bit in some cases. Really, the ones that we're noting that are the big differences is the increases for the Enchant and Imagine keys. That's the big one. But everything else has been pretty steady. One other notable thing that I will get to, and that is the park hopper. For single day tickets, the park hopper used to be a flat rate. It was, $65, I think, last year. If you wanted to get a park hopper, you would just simply add $65 to your single day ticket price, which is a lot, by the way. I very highly suggest, this is something I've been saying for years as well, I highly suggest not getting a park hopper. I strongly encourage guests to just go to Disneyland. Disneyland there's just so much to do at Disneyland. You don't need it unless you have, very specific things you want to be doing. But if you're getting a multi-day ticket, for example, just spend one day at DCA and then spend the other 2 at Disneyland. Save your money, save a little bit of money on the park hopper. But if, it's still it used to be, they used to make the park hopper an easy decision. It wasn't that much more. And you could say, oh my gosh, we could get it in for just another $20 or $30. Because that's so much less than the regular price. But $65 is a lot of money. Well, it's not $65 anymore. It is still for the lower tiers. They have now flexed. That's the point I'm trying to get to. They have now flexed the park hopper. It used to be $65 flat across the board. Now it is flexed just like the tiers are. Tier 0 and 1 and 2 are $65. Tier 3 is now $70. So as you get up into the more in-demand dates, you got to pay more for the park hopper. And then tiers 5 and 6 are $75. So that's got us to that $281 number. If you want to get a single day park hopper on tier 6, $281. And here's the thing, is that's a net win for Disney. That's a net win for Disney because they're going to lose guests. People are going to say, I'm not paying that, and they're not going to go. But enough people will say yes to account for those guests that are lost and then some. It's a net win for Disney to do that. So they still, we'll get back to supply and demand. They still are trying to reach, they're getting closer, but they're still trying to reach that equilibrium for supply and demand. Demand was way ahead. There was no price. You could just keep raising prices and we would never catch up. But they didn't do it suddenly. They knew this. Disney knew this. They said we've got to create some equilibrium there. There's way too much demand for this park based on the supply. With the supply being one. There's one Disneyland. So they tried DCA. I mean, it works, and hopefully they're going to create some more park space with the expansion. But there is still just one Disneyland, and so demand is very high still. But they're evening that out, and they've been doing it over time, and gradually they are or have gradually started to reach an equilibrium of supply and demand. And I think that we'll probably get there in the next year or two. We're going to see the parks get really close or really slow, next year when they raise the prices again, because people's incomes aren't going up relative to that pace. So Disney is very definitely, I don't want to say catering, but they're making their money off the people who do have more expendable income. So there's that, and then we've got just one other thing that we'll mention here. Lightning Lane Multi-Pass. Old price was $30. They're jumping the price to $2 or by $2 to 32% or $32 at a 6.7% increase, commensurate with the other increases there. I don't think that's enough. I do feel like there's, there are days when it seems like they're not selling any. And then there are days when you can just see that Lightning Lane is just dominating the park. It's overrunning the park. I feel like this is Disney's attempt to, again, try to maintain some sort of optical illusion of affordability, especially compared to Universal Studios and Knott's Berry Farm, where the prices are $100 and more. I think it's $150 on some days for Universal's Express Lane. Knott's you might as well just add the price of Fast Lane into your ticket, because on anything but a slow day, you cannot go to Knott's Berry Farm without getting Fast Lane. You just can't, because the whole point of Knott's Berry Farm is to go on the rides. They have Ghost Town. I'm going on a rant. They have Ghost Town and Camp Snoopy as themed areas, but for the most part, people are going to Knott's Berry Farm for the rides. So you're going to go to Knott's and then, get that cheap ticket, which it is, but you can just walk around and you could do three or four attractions a day, maybe, if you're there all day. The queues are just enormous. You cannot go to Knott's Berry Farm on a busy day without getting Fast Lane if you want to ride a bunch of rides. And then obviously we could talk about the quality of the experience, but that's another conversation. I feel like they could easily put that up to $40, $45, $50, and people won't even notice. Well, they'll notice, but they won't flinch. That's going to be something. Watch for the prices for multi-pass to go up more quickly than once a year. I think we'll see another price increase in maybe every 6 months or something like that, because they did just raise the prices not long ago. They raised the prices in between the last ticket price increase, and I'm expecting more of that. I think they're gonna get that into the $40, $45 range in the near future, in my opinion. So that's it. I think I've covered everything, guys. We got through that pretty quickly, I thought. Just 45 minutes or something like that. I don't know how the edit will come out, but I hope this is helpful in understanding some of what's happening here. As I mentioned, to summarize, this is, compared to previous years, this is kind of nominal. It's not out of line, and it is consistent, in terms of the frequency that they're doing it. I don't believe that this is something that they are, they need to be listening to what's happening out in the world today or anything like that, especially with what's going on in Florida right now. Disney is just executing a plan that they've had in place for a decade or more, and they're just incrementally going through those stages, and that's where we are today. I do think that at some point we will reach an equilibrium there. Like I mentioned, supply will meet demand, and we'll start seeing these things level off. But gosh, people still love going to Disneyland, you guys. I still love going to Disneyland. And I've not been afraid of saying I would pay more for an Inspire Key. I would pay more for an Inspire Key that had no reservations, that kind of thing. And by the way, no clues, no indication here that they're interested in getting rid of either the reservation system or obviously Lightning Lane Multi-Pass. That's still on the thing. I see no end in sight for any of that. And I know people are waiting to buy their Magic Keys they're waiting for the reservation system to end. I'm afraid to suggest that you may keep waiting. I'm sorry, and I don't mean that to be harsh or anything like that. That's just my prediction. Is that every time I think that Disney has, they've reached some sort of limit, or they're desperate, or they're panicking or anything like that, I just see them continually doing the same thing year after year, which suggests that they are on track, that they're getting what they want. They still want to sell Magic Keys, but they're getting what they want out of it, at the time, right now, at the pace that they're selling them. Let us know. I'll try to answer any questions you guys have in the comments. I'm happy to try to help you guys figure things out. And, let me know. I'll try to answer. And if you like the show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/freshbaked. You can also join our newsletter. I mentioned that earlier in the show. There's a link in the description. Join our newsletter. I'll be publishing these graphics and some other, things, notes that we can make about, breakdowns of these new price increases. And then follow us on Instagram at _freshbaked, on Twitter at freshbakedisney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at freshbakedisney. Thanks everybody for watching. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. Fresh baked.